And there are different ecological levels. And the next slide actually defines each one. And went over this really briefly in chapter 1. We have the individual or the species. We put a lot of similar individuals together. We end up with a population. Then we put various species that live together, and we end up with a community. And as you can see, we're kind of have some non-living things. Then we have the ecosystem, which we're going to put our non-living things also. And then we have the biome. And then the largest is, of course, the biosphere. And a biome, just to kind of give you an indication of what a biome is, we live in the deciduous, Miss Carrie can't spell. Oops, back her up there. We live in what's called the deciduous forest. Looks like it's spelled right. And this means that the leaves fall from the trees. And that's the type of biome. Other biomes which you may have heard about are like the desert, the tundra. Those would be examples of biomes. We're not going to spend very much time, or maybe no time at all, on biomes. I think you spend a lot of that time in 8th grade. All right, so the biosphere is too large and too complex to study as a whole. So we need to break it down into smaller sections. What you need to remember is ecologists divide the biosphere into levels of organization to study because they can't study the whole Earth at one time. It's just too big. The levels increase in complexity as the numbers and the interactions of the organisms increase. So you start very small with your individual species and you increase to the biosphere. So this might be your species, and then we go up to the biosphere. So we've got organization, population, community, ecosystem, biosphere, and biome comes in to play here. So if we were to add biome, that level would be right there. So this one, ecosystem, starts to include the non-living surroundings. And here are all the definitions of each one. And so I'll just kind of pause here for maybe 30 seconds and let you write down each of the definitions that apply to each of those areas. All right. Next we have ecosystem interactions. And ecosystem interactions are basically habitat and niche. And these are pretty easy to remember. A habitat, in very simple terms, is going to be an organism's address. So you live in a house at a specific address. Craig's address is 401 South Randall. A niche is going to be the role or position that an organism has in its environment. Okay, your niche is you are a student. So when we talk about a niche, as you can see here, it's a full range of characteristics. It includes its place in the food web, range of temperatures that the organism needs to survive, type of food it needs to survive, how an organism gets its food, which species uses the organism for food, the physical conditions required for survival, when and how an organism reproduces. So once again, a niche is the role or position that an organism has in its environment. All right, finally we're going to talk about community interactions, and these are very, very simple, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time explaining them because I think that you can figure these out for yourself. All right, the first one we have is competition. And of course, the key here is right down here. Competition is where they're competing for a resource, and it always results in a winner and a loser. Just like two football teams come together on a Friday night, somebody's got to win and somebody's got to lose. That is competition. Next one is predation. Of course, with predation, you have an interaction where one organism captures and feeds on another organism. The organism that does the killing, this would be the owl, that is the predator. And the organism that is killed, which at this point is that sad little mouse, that is the prey. So once again, in predation, it is predator and prey relationship. Symbiotic relationship is a little bit different. It's any relationship in which two species live closely together. So two species live closely together. And there are three main classes of a symbiotic relationship. There's mutualism, commensalism, and parasitism. So once again, three main classes of symbiotic relationships. Once again, mutualism, commensalism, and parasitism. And I'll go through each one of these once again very quickly. Once you see the pictures, I think that's going to help you remember each of these types of relationships. So mutualism, mutual is the key here. Mutual is a relationship between two or more organisms that live closely together, and here's the key, they benefit from each other. So our example up here is the bee and the flower. The bee, of course, gets the nectar and the pollen from the flower, and the bee carries the pollen to another flower to pollinate it. So the bee is getting food and the flower is benefiting from moving its pollen from one flower to another. Of course, down here we have the classic bird and crocodile, and we know this cute little bird right here is cleaning the teeth, cleaning all the teeth off of the crocodile. So it gets food and the crocodile gets his teeth cleaned. All right, the next example is commensalism. And of course, commensalism is going to be something very familiar to you because, of course, who do we have here? But we have our friend Nemo. Nemo, the clownfish, who lives amongst the sea anemone. So in commensalism, one member of the association benefits and the other is neither helped nor harmed. So of course the clownfish can live amongst the stinging anemone and are protected within that particular environment. And the last relationship is parasitism. Parasitism is an example where one organism lives lives on or inside another organism and, here's the key, harms it. Here we have our friend the mosquito, and you can see that it is sucking the blood out of the human. In a parasitic relationship, the parasite obtains all or part of its food from the other organism, and that particular organism is called. In parasitism, we have the host, and in this case, the host is the human. The key to parasitism is parasites actually weaken the host, but they do not kill the host. Because if they kill the host, then they have nothing to get any nutrition from. This over here is an example of a tapeworm. And these live in the intestines of animals. So another example of a parasite is going to be a tick. And there we did it again. Let's try this one more time since we're almost done. A tick is an example of a parasite. That would be another example. Lice is an example. So ticks and lice. Those are examples. These are ones that actually affect humans. Well, tapeworms, we can get tapeworms from eating meat that might have the eggs in them. And of course, we can get stung by a mosquito. So let's see if Miss Carrie can fix this botched little movie up, and hopefully it will work out just fine. And that concludes 2-1.